The first time I saw the human diplomat Jack Morrison, I laughed. We all did. Looking back now, that was our first mistake. I'm Caxol, a junior diplomatic aide in the Galactic Council, and I'm recording this as a warning to anyone foolish enough to underestimate humans, especially this particular human. That morning started like any other on New Genesis, our pride and joy of a space station. The artificial sun cast its golden light through the crystalline dome above the Grand Concourse, where representatives from 1,000 worlds mingled in what we proudly called the heart of civilized space. Did you hear my colleague Zyra whispered, her bioluminescent spots pulsing with excitement? They're sending a human to negotiate the expansion treaties. Just when I flicked my antennae in amusement. The Arcturus Federation sends 12 delegates. The Hive Collective sends 50. What do they think they'll accomplish with one? The answer walked through the main entrance precisely on time, wearing what I later learned was called a suit. Jack Morrison stood exactly 6 feet tall, with graying hair at his temples and eyes the color of Earth's oceans. He carried no ceremonial weapons, wore no diplomatic medals, and was accompanied by 0 assistants. By council standards, this was the equivalent of showing up naked to a royal wedding. "Welcome to New Genesis, Ambassador Morrison," I said, trying to keep the amusement out of my voice. As the junior aide assigned to him, it was my job to make him feel comfortable. "I trust your journey was pleasant." "Call me Jack," he replied with a smile that seemed to suggest he was sharing a private joke with himself. "And the journey was fine, though your security could use some work. I counted 17 vulnerable points in your defense grid on the way in." I laughed, then realized he wasn't joking. "That's concerning," I managed to say. "Only if you're planning to attack us," he replied, that same mysterious smile playing at the corners of his mouth. As I led him through the station, I couldn't help but notice how other delegates reacted to his presence. The warrior poets of Rigel 6 stepped aside, their battle songs faltering. The typically boisterous Jovian ambassadors grew quiet. Even the hive mind representatives seemed to shift uneasily in their crystalline shells. "Is something wrong?" I asked, noticing how the crowd parted before us. "Not yet," Morrison replied cheerfully. "But the day is young." That's when I heard the first whisper. A Martian trade delegate, speaking in what they thought was too low a frequency for human ears. "Is that him? The one they call?" The delegate's companion cut them off with a sharp gesture. I noticed Morrison's smile widen slightly, though he gave no other indication he'd heard. We reached the diplomatic quarters, and I began my standard orientation speech. "Your suite has been prepared according to human biological requirements, the atmospheric mix." "The air vents are too wide," Morrison interrupted, glancing at the ceiling. "And there's only one exit. We'll need to fix that." "Fix what?" "Sir. Jack, this is one of our most secure diplomatic residences." He patted my shoulder. The gesture seemed friendly, but I felt a strength in those fingers that made my exoskeleton tingle with warning signals. "Don't worry about it," he said. "I'll handle the modifications myself. Now, what time is the council session?" 2 hours, I replied, trying to shake off my unease. "But there's the matter of your diplomatic credentials and security clearance." Already handled, he pulled out a data crystal that pulsed with more security authorizations than I'd ever seen in one place. "Anything else?" Before I could answer, my comlink chimed. The council was calling an emergency pre-session meeting. Something about concerns regarding the human representative. "Go ahead," Morrison said before I could excuse myself. "I'm sure they have lots of questions. Just remember to tell them one thing for me." "Yes." "Tell them I'm looking forward to today's session." His smile remained friendly, but something in his eyes made me think of Stellar Core's immense power, carefully contained, but capable of going supernova at any moment. As I hurried to the council chambers, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't hosting a diplomat at all. The whispers in the corridors grew louder, and I began to catch fragments of stories. Stories about a human who had single-handedly ended the Perseus War. About a negotiator who brought the Titan hegemony to its knees without firing a shot. About someone the more militant species feared to name. What exactly had we invited onto our station? The council was about to find out, and none of us were ready for the answer. The Grand Council chamber was designed to intimidate. 300 seats rose in concentric rings toward a ceiling that displayed a real-time map of the galaxy. Each counselor's platform hovered independently, a subtle reminder of their elevated status. The human solitary podium at the chamber's center looked almost painfully small in comparison. I stood at my designated spot near the junior advisor's tier, trying not to fidget as Ambassador Nyx Era of the Proxima Dominion called the session to order. Her silver scales caught the light as she rose, all four arms raised in the traditional gesture of authority. We address the matter of human expansion beyond their permitted boundaries, she announced, her translator rendering her words into 30 different languages simultaneously. The council recognizes Jack Morrison, representing Earth and its colonies. Morrison stood quietly, hands clasped behind his back. He looked almost bored. "Thank you, Ambassador," he said. "Earth requests a revision of the Orion treaties to allow settlement of the Carina sector." The chamber erupted in overlapping voices. The Carina sector was prime real estate, rich in resources and strategically positioned. At least 6 other species had claims there. "Preposterous," bellowed Ambassador Kroll of the Taurus Combine. His massive form shook with what might have been laughter or rage. Humans can barely manage their existing territories. The Carina sector requires finesse. "Like the finesse you showed on New Venus," Morrison asked mildly, "before your mining operation rendered it uninhabitable." Kroll's face darkened to a dangerous purple. "You dare." "I dare to state facts," Morrison cut in. "Humanity has transformed 17 previously uninhabitable worlds into thriving colonies. Our terraform success rate is 89%. Yours is 23%. We're not asking for charity. We're offering expertise." Expertise. Ambassador Nyx of the Silicon Consciousness flickered her holographic form in what their species considered a sneer. "Your species still fights among itself. You can't even achieve consensus within your own governments." "We call that democracy," Morrison replied. "It's messy, but it works better than your binary thinking. When was the last time the Silicon Consciousness had a new idea?" The chamber grew deathly quiet. No one spoke to the Silicon Consciousness that way. Their quantum processors controlled half the galaxy's data networks. Ambassador Nyx Ara slithered forward, her scales rippling with barely contained anger. "Perhaps humans mistake the purpose of this council. You are here by our grace. Your species is barely out of its gravity well. You should be grateful we allow you any territory at all." Morrison's smile took on that dangerous edge I'd seen earlier. "Grateful? Like the Regellians were grateful when you carved up their home systems? Or like the Centaurians were grateful when you imposed mining quotas that bankrupted their economies?" "Choose your next words carefully," human Nyx Ara warned. Her venom sacs were visibly swelling, a sign of aggression her species usually took great pains to hide in diplomatic settings. "I always choose my words carefully, Ambassador. Let me choose these. Humanity isn't asking for permission. We're offering cooperation. There's a difference." Admiral P. Talk of the Stellar Guard slammed his war gauntlet on his podium. "Is that a threat?" "Not yet. Just a historical observation. Every time this council has tried to contain humanity, it's ended badly. For the council." Perhaps Nyx Ara's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "We should have ended the human problem when we first encountered your kind. A simple adjustment to your sun's magnetic field. It could still be arranged." The chamber went silent. Even for the Galactic Council, threatening a species' home star was taboo. Morrison's change was subtle but profound. His relaxed stance shifted slightly, and suddenly he looked less like a diplomat and more like something ancient and dangerous wearing a suit. "Ambassador," he said softly, "I strongly suggest you rephrase that." Or what Nyx Ara raised herself to her full height, towering over the podium. "Your species has no allies here. No fleet within 100 light years. You stand alone." "We always stand alone. That's how we prefer it." Morrison's voice carried to every corner of the chamber without raising its volume. "Let me be clear, threatening Earth is what we call a terminal mistake. The kind you only make once." Empty words from a powerless species, Nyx Ara declared. "This session is ended. The human petition is denied. And perhaps it's time we reviewed all human holdings in council space." As the chamber erupted in chaos, I saw Morrison reach into his jacket pocket and withdraw something small and metallic. He spoke into it quietly. "Authorization code Morrison 7 Alpha. Execute contingency Black Friday." "What are you doing?" I asked, breaking protocol to approach his podium. Giving them one last chance to be reasonable, he replied. Though based on historical precedent, they won't take it. The council doesn't respond well to threats, I warned him. Good thing this isn't a threat. Then he smiled at me almost kindly. It's a countdown. Above us, the galaxy map flickered once, then went dark. Throughout the chamber, communication devices suddenly died. In the distance, I heard the first alarms begin to sound. What have you done, Nix? Ara demanded. Me, Morrison shrugged. I'm just a diplomat. But you really shouldn't have threatened Earth. They get very annoyed about that sort of thing. That's when the lights went out, and everything went straight to hell. The emergency lights bathed the diplomatic quarter in a blood-red glow. I was hurrying Morrison back to his quarters, following standard security protocols, when the first strike team appeared at the corridor junction ahead of us. Sir, we need to... I turned to warn Morrison, but he was already moving. Get down, he said calmly, pushing me behind a decorative pillar. The movement was gentle but irresistible, like being moved by a tractor beam. The strike team was Proximan Elite Guard, the best soldiers in Ambassador Nix Ara's personal army. 6 of them, armed with neural disruptors and plasma rifles. They moved with the liquid grace their species was famous for, spreading out in a textbook containment pattern. Surrender, Human, their leader, called out. You will be detained pending investigation of your threats against the Council. Morrison sighed, actually sighed like a parent disappointed with a child's poor test scores. 2 problems with that, he said, his hands moving to adjust his cuffs. First, I didn't threaten anyone, I warned them. Second, he glanced at his watch. I have a dinner reservation in 20 minutes. What happened next rewrote everything I thought I knew about human capabilities. Morrison's suit jacket came off in one fluid motion, revealing what looked like standard human formal wear underneath. But the fabric moved oddly, shifting and hardening into segments of matte black armor. His tie unwound itself, becoming a flexible carbon fiber weapon. The first Proximan fired. Morrison wasn't there anymore. He flowed between the plasma bolts like water through rocks, closing the distance to the strike team in 3 impossible steps. The carbon fiber weapon whipped out, wrapping around the leader's plasma rifle and yanking it away. Morrison caught it with his other hand and tossed it to me. Hold this, he said, as if passing me a drink at a party. Safety's on the left. The remaining guards switched to close combat mode, their battle scales bristling with bioelectric charge. Against most species, this would have been a death sentence. The Proximan Elite Guard trained from birth in their species' unique martial art, a combination of their natural flexibility and bioelectric abilities. Morrison matched them move for move. When they struck high, he went low. When they tried to surround him, he kept moving, never letting them use their superior numbers. His movements were precise, economical, without a single wasted gesture. This is really unnecessary, he told them while dislocating one guard's primary striking arm. We could be discussing this over drinks instead. A neural disruptor beam grazed his shoulder. The armor beneath his shirt absorbed it without a mark. Now that he said, sounding genuinely offended, was rude. He reached into his pocket and pulled out what looked like a handful of small silver spheres. With a casual flick, he scattered them across the floor. They rolled outward, then stopped. I suggest you all step back, he advised the guards. They didn't listen. The spheres erupted with a high-pitched sonic pulse that sent the Proximans reeling, their sensitive inner ear structures overwhelmed. Morrison walked through their stumbling forms, tapping each one precisely at the base of their skull. They dropped like stones. Non-lethal, he assured me, seeing my expression. They'll wake up with headaches, but no permanent damage. What? What are you? I managed to ask. Right now? Late for dinner, he retrieved his jacket, which somehow reverted to looking like normal formal wear. But we should probably move. They'll have more teams coming. As if on cue, alarms began blaring from multiple directions. The station's security network was activating full lockdown protocols. Heavy security doors began slamming shut along the corridors. How many guards are on this station? Morrison asked as we ran. 300 in the primary security force, I replied automatically. Plus whatever the individual ambassadors brought. Maybe 600 total. He nodded, looking almost pleased. Good. That should keep things interesting. He pulled another device from his pocket, this one looking like a simple pen. You might want to cover your ears. The pen emitted a brief pulse, and every security door in our section slid open. Station security has full control of those doors, I protested. Head Morrison corrected. Amazing what you can do with a good computer virus and 90 seconds of prep time. He checked his watch again. Speaking of which, we should reach somewhere more defensible before backup systems kick in. The diplomatic quarter has 17 separate security checkpoints, I said. There's no way to. Morrison held up 5 fingers. Then 4, 3, 2, 1. The lights went out again, but this time emergency power failed to kick in. In the perfect darkness, I heard him chuckle. 17 checkpoints. You said there was a sound of more items being removed from his apparently bottomless pockets. Want to see a neat trick? Before I could answer, white-hot light flared through the darkness, and the real fighting began. The emergency bunker beneath the council archives wasn't my first choice for shelter, but Morrison insisted. As security teams thundered past outside, I watched him calmly hook a small device into the archive's quantum mainframe. You know this is restricted data, I said, trying to ignore the distant sounds of combat. Even council members need special clearance too. Got it, Morrison interrupted, screens blooming to life around us. Now let's see what the council really knows about me. The first file opened, and my blood turned to ice. Incident Report Titan Rebellion, Settlement 23, I read aloud. Casualty count none. Property damage total. Notes: negotiator arrived alone, warned Titan leadership 3 times. After warnings were ignored. Skip to the end, Morrison suggested, sorting through more files. Entire settlement found abandoned next morning. No signs of violence, no bodies, no equipment. 50,000 Titans just gone. I stared at him. That was you. They were using the settlement as a staging ground for an attack on human space. I convinced them to relocate. He smiled. Very far away. Another file popped up: Perseus War, final phase. That's impossible, I protested. The Perseus War ended when their entire battle fleet vanished in the narrow zone. Their high command was found locked in their own brig, babbling about shadows that walked through walls. Morrison's smile widened slightly. No, I whispered. One human couldn't. Would you like to see the footage? He asked politely. Before I could answer, a priority alert flashed across the screens. Live security feed from the council chamber showed chaos. Representatives were demanding emergency evacuation, while Ambassador Nixara tried to maintain order. What did they call you? She was shouting. That name, what was it? Baba Yaga, a Martian delegate whispered. On Earth, they call him Baba Yaga. A fairy tale, Nixara laughed, but there was fear in it. You fear a human nursery story. Look up the file, Morrison murmured, typing commands. Security classification ultra black. The file that appeared made me forget to breathe. Subject: Morrison, Jack. Official title: Diplomatic Troubleshooter. Unofficial designation: Baba Yaga. Notes: under no circumstances should subject be. The text switched to images. A space station burning. A fleet of warships drifting dead in space, their crews alive, but unable to explain the last 24 hours. A fortified bunker opened like a tin can, its defenders swearing they never saw their attacker. The Baba Yaga was a witch in human stories, I said, remembering my xenoculture studies. She lived in a house that walked on chicken legs. And dealt with those who broke sacred laws of hospitality, Morrison added. The name stuck after the Proxima incident. Another file opened automatically: Proxima incident, 7 years ago. That's classified beyond my clearance, I started to say, then saw Morrison's expression. What did they do? Captured a human medical ship. Civilian vessel, mostly doctors and children. His voice stayed pleasant, but his eyes made me want to hide. They thought they could use it as leverage in trade negotiations. I never heard about this. No one did. That's the point. He gestured at the screen. 48 hours after they took the ship, every military installation in Proxima space experienced simultaneous systems failures. Their defense grid shut down. Their communications went dark. And in every command center, on every screen, one message played on repeat. The file showed the message, "Let them go." They didn't, I guessed. No, they didn't. So I went to get our people back, he shrugged. The Proximans still don't know how their entire defense force ended up locked in their own brigs, or how the hostages were returned without a single alarm being triggered, but they never touched another human ship. A new alert flashed. The council was voting on emergency protocols. Ambassador Nick's era was demanding they activate the station's defense systems. They have antimatter cannons, I said. Enough firepower to vaporize half the station. No, they don't, Morrison replied calmly. I disabled those 3 hours before the meeting. Really, their maintenance security is embarrassing. Why are you telling me all this? Because in about 2 minutes they're going to make another mistake. And I want one witness who understands exactly why what happens next is their own fault. The screen suddenly filled with new alerts. Security teams were converging on the archives. Someone had traced our location. Ah, Morrison said, standing up. Right on schedule, he reached into his jacket and produced what looked like a simple business card. If you'd do me a favor. What? Take this to the council. It's my counter-proposal for the Carina sector situation. I looked at the card. On it was written one sentence: the correct answer is yes. That's not a proposal, I protested. That's the only option they have left, Morrison finished. Though they don't know it yet, he checked his watch one more time. If you'll excuse me, I have 6 security teams to educate about proper diplomatic etiquette. As he turned to leave, I found my voice. The stories about you, they're not just diplomatic records, are they? They're warnings. Smart kid, he flashed that dangerous smile one more time. Let's hope the council is as quick to catch on. I'd hate to add another story to the collection. The door hissed open, and he stepped out to meet the approaching security teams. Behind him, the screens filled with more classified files, more incidents, more impossible stories about one human who kept the peace by being scarier than any war. They really should have let him have dinner first. I wish I could say I delivered Morrison's message to the council immediately. Instead, I found myself transfixed by the security feeds, watching what happened when 6 heavily armed teams encountered one human in a hallway. Targets acquired, the lead officer reported. Human diplomats surrounded. Morrison stood in the center of the corridor, hands in his pockets. Evening, gentlemen. Here to surrender. The security teams carried the latest quantum pulse rifles. Their armor could stop plasma rounds. Their neural networks were hardened against electronic warfare. They had planned for every contingency. Every contingency except Morrison reaching up and unscrewing a light fixture. The corridor plunged into darkness. There was a sound like quiet laughter, 3 soft thumps, and a whispered, "Mind your step." When emergency lighting kicked in 10 seconds later, half the security team lay unconscious. The other half stood in fighting stances, facing every direction except up. Morrison dropped from the ceiling vent behind them. Point of interest, he said, tapping 2 guards on the neck before they could turn. Humans invented something called parkour. You might want to look it up. The remaining guards opened fire. Morrison flowed between the shots like water through rocks, each movement purposeful and precise. He wasn't just fighting, I realized. He was teaching them a lesson. Lesson 1, he said, disarming a guard with what looked like a bar napkin and some sleight of hand. Never assume your opponent's reach. A neural net wrapped around him from behind. He rolled with it, using the momentum to throw its wielder into 2 others. Lesson 2, physics applies to everyone equally, even diplomats. The last guard, showing more wisdom than his colleagues, turned to run. Morrison pulled what looked like a pen from his pocket and threw it. The pen sparked, and the guard's armor locked up, leaving him frozen mid-stride. Lesson 3, always carry a spare pen. The station's general alarm began blaring. On my screens, I watched security teams mobilizing across all levels. They were adapting, learning from the first team's mistakes. The next confrontation would be harder. Morrison smiled like it was his birthday. I switched through security feeds, tracking his progress through the station. He never took the same route twice, never used the same trick twice. Each encounter showed a new facet of human combat philosophy that made me question everything I thought I knew about warfare. In the hydroponics bay, he used the irrigation system to short out a squad's electronic weapons. In the maintenance tunnels, he somehow reprogrammed the cleaning drones to create a coordinated smoke screen. In the cargo hold, he defeated an entire platoon using nothing but strategically placed banana peels from the station's food stores. "This is impossible," I heard a security captain say over the comm. "He's just one human." "No," I whispered to myself, understanding finally dawning. "He's the human." On my screen, I watched Morrison pause at a junction, looking directly into a security camera. He gave a little wave, then pointed left. The camera feed showed an empty corridor. 10 seconds later, 3 security teams rushed past my hiding spot, heading left. I heard Morrison's footsteps going right, followed by the soft sound of an access panel opening. I checked the station schematics. He was systematically moving through the station, disabling key systems in a precise pattern. But why? The security teams were coordinating better now, closing in from multiple directions. That's when I saw it. The pattern. He wasn't running from them. He was hurting them. "All units converge on Section 7," the security command ordered. "We have him trapped." In the council chamber, Ambassador Nyx Ara watched the same feeds I did. Finally, she hissed, "Send in everything we have." I pulled up the station schematics again. Section 7 was perfect for a last stand. Multiple entry points, good cover, clear lines of fire. Any sensible person would avoid being cornered there. Unless... I zoomed in on the maintenance logs. 3 days ago, a routine inspection had noted some odd power fluctuations in Section 7. The inspector had found nothing wrong, but recommended a full diagnostic when time permits. The inspection was signed off by one J. Morrison. "Oh no," I whispered. The security teams breached Section 7 from all entrances simultaneously, weapons ready. Morrison stood in the center of the room, still wearing that same pleasant smile. 47 armed personnel, he noted. "Finally, someone takes me seriously." "You have nowhere to run," the security commander announced. "Run?" Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Why would I run from exactly where I want to be?" He pulled out his phone. Around the room, tiny lights that nobody had noticed began blinking in sequence. "Fun fact about your station," Morrison said conversationally. "Your quantum power grid has a fascinating quirk. If you introduce the right frequency of feedback loops in the right places." The security team's weapons suddenly powered down. Their armor went dark. Even their comms died. "It creates a localized energy dead zone," Morrison cracked his knuckles. "Just you, me, and good old-fashioned physics." What happened next was less a fight and more a demonstration. Morrison moved through the security teams like a teacher correcting student mistakes. Each strike was precise, each movement calculated. He wasn't just defeating them, he was showing them why they were defeated. "Your problem," he explained, dancing between 3 guards trying to rush him, "is that you rely too much on technology." Humans, he swept their legs out with a move that ignored their armor's enhanced stability. "We plan for when technology fails." In 4 minutes, it was over. 47 of the station's best security personnel lay on the floor. None dead, none seriously injured, all thoroughly educated. Morrison straightened his tie. "Now," he said to the nearest security camera, knowing Nyx Ara would be watching. "About that dinner reservation." On my screens, I watched the council erupt into panic. They had just witnessed one human systematically dismantle every security measure they had, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through preparation, skill, and what appeared to be weaponized common sense. As I finally headed to deliver his message, I realized what truly made Morrison terrifying wasn't his combat skills or his strategic mind. It was that he had given them every chance to avoid this, had warned them explicitly, had practically drawn them a map of what would happen if they pushed him. And they had pushed him anyway. The council was about to learn why some warnings come only once. The council chamber looked different with the galaxy map offline. Darker, smaller. The hovering platforms had descended to their emergency positions, bringing the council members down to ground level. No one looked comfortable about that. I arrived just as Morrison walked through the main doors, straightening his cuffs. "Apologies for the delay," he said. "Traffic was terrible." Ambassador Nyx Ara's scales had lost their shine, but she still tried to maintain her authority. You have committed acts of war against this council. No, Morrison replied. I committed acts of self-defense after being threatened with solar genocide. There's a difference. Your secretary can explain it while filing the incident report. He walked to the center of the chamber, precisely where he'd stood hours earlier. The council members shifted uneasily in their seats. Several chairs were conspicuously empty, their occupants having fled during the security breach. Now then, Morrison continued. About the Carina sector. You dare? High Admiral Peacock's voice shook with rage. After this display of barbarism. Barbarism, Morrison raised an eyebrow. Nobody died. Nobody was permanently injured. Even your security systems will recover once someone finds the reset codes I left in the cafeteria coffee maker. He paused. Though I suggest changing them. Your current passwords are embarrassingly simple. What do you want? The question came from Ambassador Lix of the Silicon Consciousness, her holographic form flickering with what might have been fear. The same thing I wanted 6 hours ago. The same thing I've wanted since arriving. Morrison's voice carried to every corner of the chamber. Cooperation, understanding, and maybe dinner, though I suspect the restaurant's closed by now. You expect us to negotiate after this? Nix era hissed. No, Ambassador. I expect you to listen. Something you should have done earlier. Morrison pulled out his phone and held it up. Right now I have access to every system on this station. Life support, gravity controls, even that fancy quantum vault where you keep the real classified files. The chamber went deathly quiet. I also have access to something far more dangerous. He smiled. The truth. With a tap on his phone, the chamber's screens lit up. Documents began scrolling past, faster than I could read. Trade agreements, military reports, secret treaties. Humanity didn't come to the Galactic Council seeking protection, Morrison said softly. We came to protect you from yourselves. What are you talking about? Peacock demanded. The Carina sector isn't just valuable real estate. According to your own surveys, it contains remnants of precursor technology. Technology your scientists estimate could destabilize the entire galaxy if improperly handled. Morrison's smile faded. Technology that 3 different council species are secretly racing to claim. More documents flashed by, weapon designs, research reports, casualty estimates. We've been watching, Morrison continued. Watching your arms race, watching your proxy wars, watching you edge closer to a conflict that could tear the galaxy apart. He spread his hands. So we offered a solution. Let humanity settle the sector. Let us act as neutral guardians while the Council establishes proper protocols for studying and sharing precursor discoveries. And if we refuse? Nix Era asked, but her voice had lost its edge. Then I release every document I've acquired, every secret deal, every hidden agenda. I imagine your own people might have some questions about how you've been spending their resources. The Silicon Consciousness representative flickered rapidly. You're bluffing. No one could have accessed all that data. Would you like me to prove it? Morrison pulled out another device. For instance, I could demonstrate my access to the quantum vault by revealing the contents of file TR 591, the one about your attempted infiltration of the Rigel banking system. Lix's hologram went completely still. Or perhaps Morrison turned to Peacock. We should discuss Operation Starfall. I believe the Centaurians would be very interested in who actually destroyed their defense platforms. One by one, he named their secrets. Not all of them. Just enough to prove he knew them all. Your point is made, Nix Ara said finally. What are your terms? The same ones I presented this morning. With 2 additions. Morrison held up one finger. First, the Council acknowledges humanity's right to defend itself against any and all threats, including those made in diplomatic settings. He raised a second finger. And you all apologize to this young aide for ruining their day. He nodded toward me. They've had to skip lunch, dodge security teams, and witness enough diplomatic incidents to fill a career. I suggest a commendation and a substantial raise. I tried very hard to become invisible as every council member turned to look at me. Those are your demands? Peacock asked incredulously. Territory rights, self-defense acknowledgement, and a commendation for an aide. Also an apology for missing my dinner reservation, but I'll let that slide. Morrison straightened his tie. I find reasonable demands are more likely to be met. Shall we vote? The voting was quick. unanimous, and notably lacking in debate. One last thing Morrison said as agreements were being signed. A piece of advice, if you'll permit it. The council members looked at him warily. Next time you meet a human diplomat, remember this: we don't send our soldiers to negotiate. We send our negotiators to fight. He smiled that dangerous smile one last time. It works better that way. For everyone. As the chamber erupted in activity, with representatives rushing to contact their governments and damage control teams beginning their work, Morrison turned to me. "Sorry about your day," he said. "But you handled it well. Ever considered a career in human diplomatic services? We're always looking for people who can keep calm in a crisis." "Ow. Think about it," I managed to say. "Good," he checked his watch. "Now, I know a lovely little place on Mars that serves excellent late-night dinner. Care to join me? I believe we have some fascinating career opportunities to discuss." As we walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a council forever changed by one human's evening of creative diplomacy, I couldn't help but ask, was this your plan all along? A wise human once said in diplomacy, "The best laid plans are the ones your opponents think they've forced you to abandon." He winked. I have no idea who said that, but it sounds good, doesn't it? Behind us, the council began the long process of adapting to a galaxy where humanity had finally stopped asking for permission and started giving lessons instead. They were about to find out that was the easier option. That was 3 months ago. Things have changed in the Galactic Council. The Carina sector is now under Joint Human Council administration, with Morrison overseeing the first wave of settlement and research teams. The Proximan Empire withdrew their objections after finding their entire defense network had been quietly replaced with human technology. Nobody knows when this happened. Nobody wants to ask. Ambassador Nix Ara retired suddenly, citing a desire to pursue spiritual enlightenment in the far reaches. Rumor has it, she flinches every time someone mentions dinner reservations. The council chambers got new security systems, and new doors, and new protocols about threatening solar systems during diplomatic meetings. They also installed coffee makers in every room, though nobody's sure if that was Morrison's suggestion or just common sense finally prevailing. As for me, I took the job. Human diplomatic services turned out to be everything Morrison promised and more. The training is intense, but fascinating. Did you know humans have 73 different ways to say no without using the word? Or that they turn making friends with their enemies into an art form? Today I'm watching another council session. A new trade dispute, another round of threats and posturing. But something's different. Every time voices start to rise, someone glances at the human representative's empty chair. Then they remember the night when one human taught the galaxy's most powerful beings about proportional response. And they lower their voices. They're learning. Slowly, but they're learning. Oh, and that twist ending Morrison promised me during dinner that night. The one that would make this whole story even better. Turns out he wasn't alone. He never is. Every human diplomatic mission has a Morrison, every trade delegation, every cultural exchange, every scientific expedition. They're out there right now, looking harmless, giving warnings that sound like suggestions, hoping nobody forces them to demonstrate why humans don't need threatening weapons or massive fleets. They are humanity's first, last, and most effective line of defense, the people who solve problems by talking first and fighting only when absolutely necessary. We call them diplomats. Everyone else calls them whatever their species word for "oh no, not again" happens to be. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a dinner reservation to keep. And trust me, nobody in the galaxy misses those anymore. End report. Diplomatic Aid First Class Cax Ol. Human Diplomatic Service. Filed under reasons to be polite to humans. Status required reading for all council members. Note: yes, even the ones who think it won't happen to them. Especially them.